Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying it in your mind, not because of what was said, but because of how small it made you feel? Disrespect cuts deeper than words. It shakes something inside you, leaving a quiet sting that lingers long after the moment has passed. The Stoics reminded us that the wound is not in the insult itself, but in how we choose to carry it. That choice is where the battle lies. There's a thin line between patience and betrayal of the self. Endure too much, and you begin to shrink, giving pieces of your dignity away as if they were worthless coins. Strike back blindly, and you surrender your composure, stepping into the chaos of another person's shadow. Either way, the cost is yours to pay. So what do you do when someone crosses that line? What do you refuse to give them, no matter how sharp their words or how careless their actions? In the moments ahead, we'll explore 5 things you must never do when faced with disrespect, because your self-respect is not negotiable. It is the ground beneath your feet. Stay with me and let's walk that ground together. As we step into the first chapter, imagine a sharp word hurled at you across a room. It lands like a stone to the chest. Your pulse quickens, your jaw tightens, and before you know it, the fire is rising. Every part of you screams to strike back, to defend your honor, to prove you're not someone to be toyed with. That urge is natural. It feels righteous. It feels like justice. But here is where the trap lies. The moment you snap, the moment you meet their venom with venom, you've already stepped off solid ground. You've left your center and walked straight into their storm. Now picture that storm, a pit of noise, of claws, of smoke. Down there lives ego, anger, and pettiness. That is their home, and every insult is an invitation to join them. They beckon, "Come down here, fight me where I live, make yourself like me." And so many do. They throw themselves into the pit and call it victory, when in truth they have surrendered. They have handed over the reins of their mind, the keys to their peace. They have given away control. The Stoics saw this with piercing clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The insult is the event. Your reaction is the mind. The world may throw ashes, but whether you catch fire depends only on what you choose to kindle." Think of 2 men at the same table. One hears an insult and snaps. He spits words sharper than knives, his face flushed, his chest puffed out. For a second, people laugh, and he feels taller. But when the echo fades, all that remains is a man who proved he could be moved like a pawn, a man who showed everyone that another's tongue controls his spirit. The other man, seated beside him, hears the same insult. He does not flinch. He takes a slow breath. He looks at the offender with eyes calm, steady, almost amused. He says nothing. The room changes. The silence spreads wider than the insult ever could, and strangely, respect flows to him, not the other. Why? Because he revealed the rarest power of all, to remain unmoved when provoked. This is not weakness, this is mastery. Seneca once wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." That pause, that sacred breath between insult and reply, is where your freedom lives. In that pause, you decide whether you will act as your own master or as someone else's puppet. In that pause, you reclaim the right to say, "My dignity is not at your mercy. My peace is not yours to touch." I recall a gathering where a woman was mocked openly. The room braced for her retaliation. Instead, she smiled faintly, turned back to her work, and carried on as though the insult were dust. People watched in silence. The mocker shrank, for his arrow had found no target. Her stillness was a wall no spear could pierce. Later, when the night ended, it was her composure that people remembered, not his words. She had turned insult into her stage and silence into her shield. Here's the paradox. It takes far greater courage to say nothing than to throw 1,000 words. True self-respect doesn't announce itself. It settles in the bones and speaks without a sound. Like a stone wall against the wind, you do not need to shout to prove your strength. You need only to stand. Every time you clap back, you feed them. You give them what they crave, your attention, your fire, your loss of balance. Disrespect is rarely about you. It is about their need for dominance, their hunger for control. The more you engage, the more you teach them that they can reach inside and twist your spirit whenever they wish. The true victory lies in denying them this power. When you stand calm, unbothered, you send a message sharper than any insult. You cannot touch me. And people notice. The room notices. The world notices. They respect the one who does not react. They respect the one who does not scramble for the last word. They respect the one who carries silence like a sword. You don't need to fight for your worth when you live as though it cannot be questioned. That is the essence of strength. Now understand this. Refusing to strike back does not mean allowing disrespect to slide. It does not mean you accept their behavior. It means you choose your ground with purpose, not impulse. You can set boundaries without fire. You can say no without rage. You can protect your space without becoming hostile. The line still exists, but you mark it calmly, firmly, and then you walk on. Victory is not measured in words exchanged, but in the peace you refuse to surrender. When you throw disrespect back, you are telling yourself a dangerous story. My emotions are theirs to command. My mood belongs to them. You are giving them the remote to your spirit, and once you hand it over, they will press every button they can. But real strength lies in knowing you could speak and choosing not to. You could retaliate, and you don't. You could chase their shadow, but you walk in light instead. Not every battle deserves your presence. Not every spark deserves a flame. Some fires die because you starve them. Some storms fade because you stand still. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is to walk away with your silence intact. Seneca taught that to be provoked is to be defeated. Remember that. The world will throw you tests dressed as insults, sneers, and slights. If you take the bait, you've already failed. But if you rise above, you turn the test into proof of your mastery. You show yourself and others that your mind is your own. So, carry this truth. When you walk away without the last word, you do not lose. You win in the only way that matters. You prove to yourself that you are unmovable. You prove that your peace is too precious to be pawned off for the cheap thrill of revenge. You prove that your silence weighs more than their noise, and that is the lesson of this first step. To meet insult with composure, to meet disrespect not with fire, but with unshakable calm, to stand where you are, rooted, steady, and free. Because when you master this, you do more than endure disrespect. You transform it. You turn it into a mirror that shows others their own weakness, while reflecting back your strength. From here, we move deeper, not just into how you respond, but into how you hold the lines that define you. Because disrespect is not only a moment, it is a test of what you will and will not allow. And that test is waiting in every silence you keep, every word you speak, every step you take forward. Moving into the second chapter, think of the quiet weight that settles in your chest when someone crosses a line and you say nothing. You swallow the moment. Tell yourself it isn't worth the fight. Convince yourself you kept the peace. But the silence echoes louder than you expect. It follows you home. It lingers in your thoughts. It whispers in the back of your mind. You abandoned yourself. That's what it feels like when boundaries are ignored. Not an act of mercy, but a quiet betrayal of your own worth. Now, imagine a small crack in the foundation of a great wall. At first it seems harmless, hardly visible, not worth the trouble of repair. But day after day, the wind and rain slip inside. The crack grows, stones shift, and before long the wall is no longer a wall. That is what happens when you let one act of disrespect slide. You may think you spared yourself conflict. In truth, you opened the door for collapse. Disrespect is rarely an accident. More often it is a test, a subtle push, a measuring of how much of yourself you will give up before you resist. The Stoics understood this danger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, waste no time arguing what respect you deserve. Live it, guard it. Mark your boundaries with clarity, not apology, because the moment you pretend it isn't a big deal, you've already handed the lesson to the other. You may go this far, and perhaps farther. And people learn. They push again and again until the line you thought you had is nothing but dust under their feet. Let me share a story. I knew a man in business who prided himself on patience. A client dismissed his work in front of others and he smiled, brushed it off, told himself he was keeping the peace. A week later, the client did it again, sharper this time. He smiled again, told himself it wasn't worth souring the deal. By the end of the year, the client had chipped him down in every meeting. What started as one ignored slight became a pattern that stripped him of dignity. He hadn't kept the peace. He had surrendered it. The lesson was clear. Silence in the face of disrespect does not protect you. It erases you. Seneca warned that he who does not prevent a crime when he can, encourages it. The same is true here. He who does not guard his dignity when it is tested, gives permission for it to be taken. Boundaries are not walls to shut the world out. They are lines that tell the world where you end and where another may not trespass. To erase that line, even once, is to teach others that the map of your life has no borders, and a land without borders is a land always under siege. But here is the paradox. To hold your boundaries does not mean to shout, to rage, to fight every trespass with fire. Strength is not always noise. Sometimes it is a calm no. Sometimes it is a steady refusal. Sometimes it is the simple act of standing and leaving the table where you are not respected. You can walk away without storm. You can say no without venom. You can claim your space without ceremony. The power lies not in the spectacle, but in the consistency. I remember a woman at a dinner, interrupted and dismissed by a friend's careless remark. She did not argue. She did not explain why it stung. She set down her fork, smiled politely and said, "That's not acceptable to me." Then she returned to her meal. The conversation shifted. The air cleared. The friend never tried again. Her strength was not in loudness, but in clarity. And clarity carries weight far beyond anger. When you ignore your own boundaries, you begin to measure your value not by how much you respect yourself, but by how much you can endure. You think endurance is noble, but endurance without honor is only erosion. You were not made to carry the weight of others' carelessness. You were made to guard your own peace, your own dignity, your own sacred space. To honor your boundaries is to remind yourself daily that you are worth the respect you demand. Even if no one else offers it, you give it to yourself first. And here lies the turning point. When you live with that clarity, something shifts. Those who thrive on disrespect find no purchase in you. They fall away, unable to feed on what you no longer offer. But those who value you, those who recognize your steadiness, will rise to meet you. They will respect a line you draw because they see that you respect it. And in time, you will gather around you not those who chip at your walls, but those who help you strengthen them. So here's where we stand. Every small moment matters. Every time you say nothing when the line is crossed, you choose to erase yourself a little. Every time you honor your boundary, you choose to stand taller. One choice leads to 1,000 tiny cuts. The other leads to 1,000 quiet affirmations of strength. The decision is yours. At this stage, carry this truth with you. Keeping the peace at the expense of your worth is not peace, it is abandonment. Real peace is found in the firmness of knowing where you stand and refusing to move for the sake of comfort. As we move forward, we will see that the search for validation from those who diminish you is another trap, and stepping away from that need is the next key to keeping your strength intact. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the restless weight that builds inside when someone disrespects you and you crave for them to see it, to admit it, to hand you back what they took. It is a hunger that gnaws quietly, the need for recognition, for apology, for proof that you mattered. But here is where the trap hides. To chase their validation is to place your worth in the very hands that tried to diminish it. It is like standing in a locked room, holding the key, yet waiting for the one who insulted you to open the door. You wait, but they never come. You starve in a prison that was never real. Now imagine reaching for the sun at midnight. No matter how high you stretch, no warmth comes. That is what it means to demand acknowledgement from the one who wronged you. Their silence, their ego, their blindness are not measures of your value. They are reflections of their own limitations. Yet too often we give away our power by insisting, "See me," "Admit it," "Apologize." And with each plea, we tie ourselves tighter to chains they forged. The Stoics warned us against this trap. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He meant, do not waste your soul demanding that others understand you. Their opinion does not alter your essence. Your worth is not a coin to be weighed on someone else's scale. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "I am my own master. No one can degrade me but myself." This is the discipline you must remember when disrespect tempts you to beg for recognition. Let me tell you of a man I once knew. His colleague mocked him openly, chipped at his name in front of others. The man could not rest until the mocker admitted fault. He chased it, demanded explanations, even begged for a clear apology. He thought victory would come when the other confessed. But it never came. Instead, weeks stretched into months, and his peace drained like water through open fingers. Then one day he realized he had built his sense of dignity on the shifting ground of another man's ego. The apology, even if it came, could never restore what he had already given away. Contrast that with a woman whose friend betrayed her confidence. The world expected her to demand closure. Instead, she carried on without asking for it. She did not beg for understanding. She did not chase an apology. She stood, calm and steady, with an inner voice that whispered, "I know who I am." And that is enough. Her quiet strength shook the room more than any confrontation ever could. And soon, the friend's betrayal shrank to nothing in the face of her composure. Here's where the heart of the matter lies. When you tie your self-worth to another's recognition, you gamble on a hand you can never control. You might wait forever for them to say the words that free you. but freedom is already yours. The key is in your hand. The moment you stop chasing their acknowledgement is the moment you return to yourself. Their inability to see you does not erase you, it exposes them. Think of it like a stage. They may refuse to clap, but the performance of your life is not diminished. The applause you crave is not required for the truth of who you are. Your worth is not theater. It is stone. It is mountain. It does not shift with their blindness. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is, poor." When you crave validation from those who already disrespected you, you make yourself poor. You trade your peace for their opinion, and that opinion is dust. So let this be your turning point. Stop seeking closure where none exists. Stop knocking at doors that were never meant to open. The people who cannot respect you are not gatekeepers to your value. They are mirrors, reflecting their own emptiness. When you no longer chase their recognition, you no longer dance to their song, and in that moment you become untouchable. Picture walking into a room with no need for approval. Your presence is calm, your energy steady. You do not beg to be seen. You do not argue for your dignity. You simply live it, and others feel it, even without words. It shifts the air. It changes the tone. Quiet confidence is heavier than noise. It sets the standard for how others will treat you moving forward. Here is the unshakable truth. Their recognition cannot raise you, and their disregard cannot lower you. Your value stands outside their reach. It is, and always has been, yours. The moment you live as though you never needed their apology is the moment you step fully into your own power. At this stage, remember this: people who know who they are do not beg for recognition. They walk on, steady and whole. Their silence is stronger than any demand. Their calm is louder than any insult. And when you live this way, you rise beyond reach. You become the mountain, unmoved by the noise below. From here, we step into an even greater trial, the mastery of emotion itself. When anger burns and instinct tempts you to explode, that is where the next lesson waits. Entering the fourth chapter, picture the sting of a word that cuts too close, the sharp edge of a tone meant to provoke, the heavy weight of an action that feels designed to wound. Your chest tightens, heat rises. The urge to lash out is immediate, primal, fierce. In that split second, it feels as though the only way to survive is to fight fire with fire. But pause, because this is the exact moment that decides whether you stand free or surrender your control. Now imagine someone placing reins in your hands, only for you to hand them back to the very person who insulted you. That is what it means to react on impulse. You give them the right to steer your mood, to dictate your tone, to redraw the story of who you are in that moment. It feels powerful to explode, but the power vanishes as quickly as it came. What lingers is regret. What remains is the sobering truth that they made you dance to their rhythm, and you let them. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus reminded his students, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. He can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by him." Think about that. Each outburst is a surrender. Each uncontrolled reaction is proof that you have been moved like a pawn. But to stay calm in the fire, that is mastery. That is the refusal to let another own your mind. I once watched two men insulted in the same way. The first erupted, his face flushed, his voice raised, his anger spilling into the room. The one who disrespected him leaned back, almost smiling because he had won without lifting a hand. The second man, confronted with the same slight, drew a slow breath. He looked the offender in the eye, steady, almost amused, and then turned his attention back to what mattered. His calm unsettled the room far more than any outburst could. People remembered his composure, not the insult. And that is the difference. One gave away control. The other revealed he was unshakable. Here's where the deeper lesson lies. Emotional discipline is not the killing of feeling. It is not a cage. It is a choice. It is the decision to express yourself from strength rather than from chaos. Anger will rise. Hurt will come. But the wise man or woman refuses to let those emotions seize the wheel. They breathe. They pause. They see the bigger picture before taking a step. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Seneca warned, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." That delay is the gap where freedom lives. In that breath, you decide whether to escalate or to master yourself. You decide whether the insult defines your day or fades into nothing. And when you choose calm, you keep authorship of your own story. Think of calmness as a shield, not a weakness. A shield that turns blows into silence. To stay centered when another tries to shake you is to send a message louder than any roar. My peace is not yours to touch. People may mistake noise for strength, but true strength is steady, it is measured, it is quiet enough to hear itself think. Consider the mountain in a storm. Lightning strikes, winds howl, yet the mountain does not move. It endures because its strength is not in noise but in depth. You are that mountain when you refuse to be pulled into another's chaos. You may acknowledge the storm, you may note the disrespect, but you do not lose your grounding. You protect your energy. You value your peace more than the shallow victory of an argument. I recall a woman insulted by her superior in a meeting. All eyes turned, expecting her to react, to defend herself loudly. Instead, she waited. She let the silence hang. Then she replied with calm clarity, addressing the work rather than the wound. The room shifted. Respect moved to her side. Her composure commanded more authority than anger ever could. The insult fell away, while her dignity remained untouched. Strength is not in the voice raised. It is in the breath held. It is in the mind that chooses clarity over chaos. Choosing to step back, to breathe, to think before responding is not about excusing the wrong. It is about choosing yourself over the storm. You can still speak. You can still set boundaries. But when you do it from composure, you speak with the weight of a mountain, not the flailing of a flame. So let this be clear. Disrespect says more about the one who gives it than the one who receives it. When you react with chaos, you let them shape the narrative. But when you remain calm, you remain the author. You hold the pen. You write the story. And in your story, no insult has the power to define you. At this stage, remember this. Being calm does not mean being passive. It means being grounded. It means refusing to let someone else steal the quality of your day. It means keeping your peace, even when provoked. And that is how you win, without ever raising your voice. From here, we turn to another subtle danger, the silence that pretends to keep the peace, but, when misplaced, erases your dignity. That is where the next lesson begins. At this stage, imagine the heavy silence that follows a cutting remark. You sit there, still, telling yourself that saying nothing will keep the peace. Your lips are sealed, but inside, something trembles. You convince yourself the storm will pass if you do not stir it. And yes, there are moments when silence is noble, when walking away is the cleanest victory. But there are other moments when that same silence is not strength, but surrender. In those moments, silence whispers to the world. Do it again. Picture a line drawn in the sand. Someone steps across it, and you say nothing. The line is erased. Next time they step farther. Again, no answer. Soon the sand shows no trace that the boundary was ever there. This is how cycles of disrespect are born, not in explosions, but in the quiet agreement of silence. Not because you deserve mistreatment, but because you never marked it as unacceptable. What you endure without protest, others learn to repeat. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Add this, if it is not acceptable, do not let it pass without naming it. Because silence at the wrong time is not neutrality, it is permission, and permission breeds repetition. I recall a colleague who often interrupted people in meetings. At first, those interrupted stayed silent, thinking it easier to keep the room calm. But with each meeting, his interruptions grew bolder. Finally, one woman raised her hand and said, "Calm and firm. Please let me finish before you respond." The room froze. The man flushed, and for the first time, he listened. She had not shouted. She had not fought. She simply broke the silence that had been feeding his behavior. Her words redrew the line in the sand, and no one doubted it stood firm. Here's where the courage lies. Using your voice does not mean starting a war. It means creating clarity. It is not about aggression, but about alignment. When you calmly state, "That's not acceptable," you do more than defend yourself. You affirm your worth to yourself first. You remind your spirit, "I will not disappear in my own silence." That affirmation echoes louder than any outburst. Epictetus taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you wish to be respected, speak like one who respects themselves. No long speeches are needed, no justifications. A few simple words carry more weight than pages of explanation. "I don't appreciate being spoken to like that," or "That won't work for me." Direct, calm, consistent. The tone does not need to be loud for the message to strike deep. Consistency is the spine of respect. If you speak once but fall silent the next time, the line blurs. People grow confused. Mixed signals are invitations to test you again. But when your response is steady, every time with calm firmness, there is no confusion left. They learn. The world learns. You teach them how to treat you by what you refuse to tolerate. Think of silence and speech as tools, each with their place. To remain silent when provoked by pettiness can be wisdom, but to remain silent when your dignity is on the line can be ruin. The art is in knowing the difference, and knowing comes from within, from asking yourself, "Am I keeping peace, or am I abandoning myself?" One path strengthens you, the other erases you piece by piece. I once heard of a man whose family mocked his choices, small jabs disguised as jokes. He laughed with them, said nothing, convinced himself it was harmless. But year by year the jokes dug deeper, until even he began to doubt his own path. The day he finally said, "I don't find that funny," the laughter died. It was not confrontation, it was clarity. And in that moment, he reclaimed something that years of silence had stolen. Protecting your space, your peace, your dignity requires courage. The courage to endure discomfort for the sake of truth. The courage to risk making others uneasy so that you may stand tall in your own life. For every time you speak with clarity, you remind yourself, "I am worth defending," and the world adjusts to that truth. Here is the lesson. Silence can guard you like armor, or cut you open like a blade, depending on when you choose it. Choose carefully. Speak when it matters. Do not shrink for anyone. Do not stand quietly in the face of what diminishes you. Stand steady and calm, with words that carry the weight of your worth. And as this chapter closes, hold this. Your voice is not noise. It is a line drawn in the earth, firm and unmistakable. When used with clarity, it is not a spark of chaos. It is the end of confusion. From here, we turn to the final truth. The real victory is not only in how you respond to disrespect, but in what you choose to carry or to finally put down after it has passed. When someone disrespects you, the moment itself passes quickly, but the echo can stay long after the room has gone quiet. Their words replay in your mind, their tone lingers in your chest, and before you know it, you are carrying their shadow into places it never belonged. This is how disrespect tries to outlive its moment, not through power, but through the weight you allow it to hold. Holding on to that weight is like walking with a stone in your shoe. It is small, but it makes every step harder. You feel it pressing with each move, not because it is truly powerful, but because you refuse to take it out. Disrespect works the same way. It only hurts for as long as you carry it. The Stoics taught us that what offends is not the act itself, but our decision to let it enter the soul. What they said, what they did, belongs to their character, not to your worth. To carry it is to take their weakness and make it your own. That is not strength. That is self-abandonment. Strength is in knowing when to put it down. Letting go does not mean excusing what happened. It does not mean pretending it did not sting. It means you refuse to give that moment more space than it deserves. You see it, you learn from it, you mark the boundary it revealed, and then you walk forward, lighter, like a traveler laying aside a burden that was never his to begin with. Think about how much of your mind is worth saving for peace, for purpose, for growth. Every minute you spend reliving an insult is a minute stolen from your own life. Every time you hold on to another's disrespect, you close the door to your own clarity. Those who know their worth learn the art of release. They do not cling to grudges. They do not replay old arguments. They step forward, carrying only what builds them. You cannot always control how the world treats you, but you can control what you bring with you after. Not everything deserves a permanent place in your heart. Some moments must be acknowledged, but then set down. When you release them, you do not lose. You win. You win your focus back. You win your peace back. You win the freedom to walk unchained. Disrespect will always exist, but what defines you is not whether you meet it, but how you choose to carry yourself through it. Protect your calm. Guard your dignity. Stand rooted in self-respect. Let your silence, your boundaries, and your presence speak for you more powerfully than any reaction ever could. If these words speak to you, take a moment to subscribe so you can continue walking this path with us. And share your thoughts in the comments with 2 simple words. Stand firm. Your voice may be the reminder someone else needs today. Carry this with you as you leave. No insult can diminish the one who refuses to carry it. You are stronger than the noise of others, and the path ahead belongs to you. In the next lesson, we will step deeper into the practices that keep your spirit untouchable no matter what storms arise.